Okay, there we go. Anyway, Patrick, it's great to see you. I know that you're have some time constraints, and we're going to go over some expired MLS listings. You've got 136 or so on the list. And typically the process that we go through, and then I want to answer your questions, is when I have an expired list, I do go through them one at a time. And it does take some time. But what I look at, first of all, I'll take, the first one there on Fort Caroline, and I'll put that address in the appraiser's website. And I want to see that they still own the property, because sometimes after it's failed, it has sold by other means.
Right, I'm with you. When I requested the list through the realtor, I believe it was 90 days plus or 180 days plus that it's been expired.
Right.
So then when I started checking it one at a time, I was probably a year old, make sure there was no transactions, like you said, to make sure it was sold.
Yeah, and so I'll just take the property, and maybe they tried to sell it 2 years ago or whatever time frame. I like to make sure that it's been exposed to the market. It just wasn't one day. And I would take that first address of Fort Caroline, and I go to the appraiser's website and I put that in there, and I can see if the people that owned it still own the property. So the people, and I'm not sure if you have the owner's names on there when she gave you the list. But you can go ahead to the appraiser's website and put that in there and see the sales history of the property.
Are we going appraiser or assessor?
Well, in different jurisdictions, sometimes they'll call it the assessor, and the next county will call it the appraiser.
Well, let me go back to the list to see, because it's got the itemized list and then it's got a more detailed list. Let me see how to get back to my. Are you still seeing my expired list?
Yeah, I see that, and we've got Donna and Gordon joining us. You can also take that address if you have a tool like PropStream and put it in PropStream, and you can see the transactions as well.
Okay, so here's a more detailed list of that Fort Caroline.
Patrick, how did you get that list?
From a realtor. So somebody that sold my last property, I hit him up right away and said, send me your or request, asked him nicely, but he was motivated since I gave him a sell. Asked him for his expired lists and high days on market. So anything that's been on the market longer than 180 days.
Yeah.
Asked him to send that to me also.
It's not easy to get the list other than through PropStream. I wish there was another source.
Well, realtors are awesome, especially if you build a rapport or if you've already given them some sales in the back. They're always hungry to help out, or even a title company, maybe, depending on the state and their access. But this is this one. So Fort Caroline, it does have the owner's name on it.
And there's not the sales history there.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't even need to go to the appraiser's office.
Yeah. This one sold for $180,000 in 2 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I would scroll back up to the listing for that one. This is this still the Fort Caroline? Yeah, it is. I'd scroll back up towards the top of your spreadsheet. And they bought it for 180 and they tried to sell it for 250 and it expired. I may suggest filtering the list even a little bit further, and maybe it's people, if they've owned it for 2 years, and they paid 180, maybe it's not worth much more than 180. So sometimes when I'm having the realtor pull that list, I'll pull it from people that have owned, for maybe 8 years or longer. So now there's time for equity to build up.
Okay, so you're saying change the date to like 2016 or something around there?
Yeah, and so when I go ahead and search expired MLS listings, I typically search for listings that expired from, just say, approximately 2 years ago, from approximately 2 years ago to 8 or 9 years ago. And so now I know that they tried to sell it. It's been exposed to the market. They tried to sell it. It's been exposed to the market for 60 days or 100 days, not 1 day. And the reason I like to go back a couple of years is we did one and the woman tried to sell it 5 years ago for $10,000. I approached her, I don't know, about 2 years ago, and I had that listing amount. I offered her 10,300. And when we bought it, she had tried to sell it 3 years prior. So there's a time period to have some built up equity.
Right. So here's a new one, Michael.
Okay.
This is the next one on the list. It's a little older, 2020. I want to just go through a process rather than trying to find the perfect one to target.
Yeah.
So this is 2020. They bought it for 17.5, and they're trying to sell it for 32.
Wow.
Now
Yeah,
this
so
quick claim deed, so it could have been a lot of quick claim deeds. So
yeah, that one, or if you continue to look at your list and you go down about 8, and there's one some that they've owned for a little bit longer period of time. And you can get this list from realtors, we can get it from PropStream, but typically I'm looking for people that have owned, just say, for 10 years or longer.
okay, here's one for 1995.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. And so the next thing I do is see, do they still own it?
Okay, so this is the current owner. So I would just go to the appraiser site right now.
Yeah, I would do that, and I would look at what did he try to sell it for?
So he tried to sell it for 99, looks like. 99.9.
Wow.
So let's go here. Let me share again. Are you on the appraiser site with me? Oh, never mind. Yeah.
I don't see the appraiser side. I see your spreadsheet.
Do you see it now?
I see it now.
Yeah.
Let's see here. All right, so what was the guy's name? Kenneth Swint.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
I don't see a Kenneth on here.
Well, there's
Oh, you know what problem I had before? I'm sorry to cut you off, Michael.
Yeah.
I requested Duval County, but he sent me the surrounding counties too. So I need to make sure this Keystone Heights is in Duval County, which I'm assuming it's not going to be. So I have to go to a different appraiser site.
Yeah, the appraiser site is one way, and if you want to do a more generic site that covers larger areas, do you have PropStream?
I don't.
Okay, if you want me to, I can go ahead and pull up PropStream, and we can just put that address in there.
Okay, well, let me check this one first because it was in a different county. So,
Okay.
so my suspicion was my investigation skills were correct. Are you still with me on
Yeah, I'm with you. I see it. I see your screen.
Clay County?
Got it.
Okay, property search. Okay, so this guy's got a few properties. Let me match the APN up with. So we're looking at 308,240. 308,240. Well, it looks like these are all kind of adjacent lots. Let me check the 947,200. 947. Okay, it's gonna be this top one right here.
Okay.
Okay, this is the property that's expired. Now he owns what was like 5 or 6 other ones. Is this a good chance this guy's a flipper too, or
Well, either that or an investor, and probably not a flipper, because if he bought this in 1995, if he was flipping it, he wouldn't have it for 29 years.
okay? So it looks like it was sold in 2022. So Grant Tour is the one that buys it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is sold.
Grantor is the seller.
Okay, so the grantee is the person
Yeah,
that buy it.
Grantor is the buyer.
So he's the one that owns it currently. Well, yeah, obviously that's the Kenneth Swim. Okay, so he bought it well, now I'm kind of confused because he's listing it for 99, but he bought it 2 years ago or 3 years ago for 173,000.
Either it's not matched up correctly, or sometimes when someone buys a property and it shows $173,000, it may include multiple properties on that record.
Okay, so so that record may be all the ones he was associated with,
It may be.
and he's just splitting it off. This one.
It's kind of hard to tell. When we looked at the record initially, it shows that he acquired the property in 1995.
Right. Well, he's not even on here. This is just an old transaction history. This wasn't up to date.
Yeah. Okay. Unless as you scroll down, there's other sale history, but
No, let me find out.
it just doesn't look like it's matching up correctly.
Yeah, so this is what the realtors pull. So this one, that's 2024. Let me try to find a good one for you. Another one.
And sometimes
2005. What's kind of the
yes, maybe the realtor, may have not understood what you were looking for.
Well, what I should have done is given him a block rather than 180 days plus, because he could have gone to
the way that I'd give the information to the realtor, I'm trying to find people that have owned property, vacant land for 10 years or longer. They tried to sell it from 2 years ago to 10 years ago. Over that period, they didn't just try to sell it yesterday. They tried to sell from 2 years ago or 3 years ago to 10 years ago, and it failed. Well, if it failed 4 or 5 years ago, the property's worth a lot more now than probably what they tried to get 5 years ago.
Right, I'm with you. Let me do this other one. This one's from an estate, so this might be more motivation. Let me go back. Are you watching my?
Yeah, I'm watching. I got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one. All right, so 2020. I think this one matches up more. Okay. So grantor is the estate of Stephen Doller. Buyer is Doller Helen.
And that one may be good because it looks like it's still within the same family.
Okay, so can we work this one?
I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and share my screen and give me the property address, if that's okay.
Okay, it's a parcel. It's vacant land, so I can give you the parcel ID.
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, it will take me a second, but bear with me.
Okay. So once we go to the appraiser's office to verify ownership and sales history, then we go somewhere else to comp it.
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with that county's website, so it'll take me a while to do that. But if you can go ahead and give me the city, county.
Okay, it's Keystone Heights.
And it may take me a second. I'm gonna have to watch this video here real quick and get the APN number. I'll show you what I'm trying to do. Okay, I always have to refresh my memory.
To search for properties by APN using PropStream, start by typing APN in the search bar and then adding a hashtag. Be sure to insert one.
Okay,
APN hash space county name, comma.
APN space, and tell me that.
County name,
Okay, what county? Clay County?
Clay County.
yep. And then comma,
Florida?
FL, yeah. No,
And then I need the APN.
03 dash 08 dash 23 dash 000 790 dash 000 dash 00.
Did I enter that wrong, Gordon?
there might be a period after Florida, FL, I'm trying to remember. It's something stupid like that. Yeah, watch the video again.
One space before typing out full parcel number. Since these numbers are only unique within the tax assessor's jurisdiction, you will also need to provide the county and state of the.
Okay, wrong order.
Yeah, it's just the order's just flipped
So the APN should be first, right?
after hashtag. And we might have to get rid of that period after Florida, I'm not sure.
I don't know what we did wrong.
So highlight all the numbers to the right of the cursor,
Oh, I got it.
cut those out. And then see if it pulls it up after FL. Oh, I lost your screen. There you go. And maybe try the period. No.
Didn't work. Oh,
Is the
Clay
comma
County.
after the 00 maybe? You might have to put a comma after the APN.
Hey,
Before-
Patrick, I know you're in a hurry too, so
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I got 15 minutes.
Property. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about searching with PropStream, be sure to check out our other videos on running comms and our new PropStream.
Yeah, it might be a comma right there.
there it is.
That's it.
All right, we got it. I always have to do the refresher on there. So here's the property right here. And here's Toller right there. I can pull up the MLS information here. They tried to sell this in 2024 for $18,000. Does that look right, Patrick?
Let me check the list real fast. 17.5 is what they had it expired for.
Okay, well, and as I look down here at the history, they had it on the market for 17.5 for a year. It fell off the market and it was pending. And it looks like, I'm not quite sure I see the dates here. It says 2/22/24. That was a year ago. It was pending. And now it says, now it's been on the market for $18,000 for a year.
Okay,
But
so it's still, yeah, so it's still for sale. It hasn't been
Yeah,
sold.
and so what I'm looking for is what they paid for it. I'm going to go back here to property details. If I can find it, I can see it's assessed at 12.5. I don't see what they paid for it.
You know, not to interrupt, Michael, but why is the value up to 260? So,
when on PropStream, when it does this, it's pulling in houses too.
oh,
So
okay,
this
that
is
makes
not
sense.
appropriate information. But as I'm
Yeah.
doing it and I'm thinking about making an offer, I click on, this is why I like this tool. I clicked on linked properties to see what else they own. It helps me understand their financial situation. So it looks like she lives in Virginia. She's out of the area. They probably owned it forever. It's assessed at 12.5. They've been trying to sell it for 17.5. So the next thing I would do is try to figure out what I think this property is worth. So I got to figure out what it's worth, put in a profit margin, and then that's going to be my offer.
Okay, can we go through those steps? Well, first we got to see what they actually bought it for to make sure we're gonna.
And I may not know. Here it says length of ownership. It's blank, but this where it may help go to the appraiser's website now. And I think when you pulled up the last two transactions, both of them had the last name of Toller. So you had one, maybe it was 10 years ago from one Toller to another Toller, but it looks like the property, if you have that record handy, the property's been in the family for a lot longer period of time.
Yeah, I have it going back to 82.
Yeah. And another thing I can do, I can go ahead and do a skip trace on her, and I can find out, I can find out how old she is, but she lives out of the area. She's been trying to sell this property right here. It's still active. It's been on the market for a year at $18,000.
Is there an MLS number by any chance?
Let me see. A lot of times when I click on MLS here, not on all of them, but many times, here's the agent's information right here. So I've got the agent's phone number, I've got the agent's email, I've got the agent's website. I probably have the agent's name in here somewhere.
If there's a number, even if it's expired, I might be able to type it into the MLS and tell you what they bought it for.
Yeah, it doesn't have an MLS number on this one, I don't believe.
Oh.
I'll just click at linked properties and see, how long they've owned some of these other ones here, if it says. And on these, it doesn't say, but she has, it looks like, I'm not sure. Here's Keystone Heights, here's Keystone Heights. I don't know if this is one or two properties, but she may own more than one property in Keystone Heights. But the thing I'm looking at initially, it's been on the market for $18,000 per year, and it's not selling. I'm guessing she's elderly. She lives out of state. She may not need the money. She got $1 million worth of equity, but she may be just tired of dealing with this property. So if it's not on the appraiser website and I can't find it here, if you want to pull up that record on the appraiser's website, and I can just follow the transaction history. Where I am, the transaction history usually goes back about 40 years. And if they've had it before 40 years or owned it for more than 40 years, the transaction history doesn't typically exist online.
Now, where do we go to comp it?
Well, a few things you can do. Here's property details, and let's look at this property again here. And
who's sharing, Michael? Am I, or are you still sharing?
I'm sharing, but you can go ahead if you want. But the other thing I can do is here it says comparable and nearby listings right here. And sometimes, depending on the market area, there will be a lot of comparables, and sometimes they just don't exist if it's a very rural area right here. So here I have, it looks like one comp, but another way I can do this is I'll get the zip code 32656. I'm going to clear this out. I put in 32656. Now I've got the zip code. And I'm just doing a new search here of vacant land and look at transactions that are going on right in that zip code. So yours is 1/4 of an acre. So I'm going to just put, 6,000 square feet to a 1/2 acre. So now there's 1,200 properties, and out of these, show me which ones have sold in the last year. Maximum ownership, 1 year. So now I've got 57 properties. that have sold, that are similar in size, that have sold within the last year in the market area. And if it's Keystone Heights, I can use this pen here, and I can draw around the area and narrow it. Instead of searching way over here that might be more suburban and yours might be more rural, I can search right here. And those are properties that have sold in the last year, and I'm having a hard time with comps. Another thing I can do is go from 1 year and say, well, let's see what's happened in the last 2 years. Just, I'm trying to find any transactions. And now I've got 132. And when I go to Keystone Heights,
My
which
ball dropped on the floor.
so I'm trying to find ones, I'm not sure exactly where yours is right in here, but I can go ahead and search by zip code. I can use this pencil feature and draw around the area. And if I still can't find comps within 2 years, sometimes I'll even go back 5 years just to find any transactions that are going on in a market area.
So Michael, I'm on Zillow right now for that area, and I got prices in the ballpark, 9.5, 11.5.
Yeah, let me go ahead and stop sharing. And so we're just playing detective, and the information that's available, it is what it is. So if I can't find recent comps, I go back further in time, or I expand my area. And I wouldn't necessarily call the realtor that's listing it for your potential seller,
Right.
Conflict of interest.
Well, who's sharing, Mike?
Yeah, you are. I see Zillow.
Okay, so if I'm using Zillow, for an example, I see these 9.5, 11.5s. What offer would I send her if I just wanted to get something out into the mail to this lady? What numbers would I throw at her?
Yeah. So what you have there are this says these are recently sold.
Yeah, it just says sold.
Okay, I would do that, but I would also see what is active there, just see what the competition is. The more information we gather, the better decision we can make. And that's hers right there.
19.5 right here, right?
Yeah, I believe that's hers.
144 days.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I'd go ahead. We're gathering information, so I'd go ahead and look at that. If you can click on that listing. And is that yours?
It could be. I'd have to.
And that one is I think yours is about 10,000 square feet. This one's about 7,000, and it may or may not have road access. So that can be, does yours have road access? So if that one did not have road access, it's inferior to yours.
Right. So just now you're saying it should take about 5 minutes. You should be able to do this research and get a price idea to send out a mailer, correct?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with this market area, so maybe it would take me a little bit longer. But my market area I'm very familiar with, so I can zip through it pretty quick. So we can go ahead and try to dig into it a little bit more now. Again, I'm not totally familiar with your county.
Yeah, and this is just a county that I was working Duval, but this is just an adjacent county that the realtor included in his expired list.
Yeah. And usually for me to learn a county, it takes me about an hour to go through. And as you go through week 2 of the class, I show Escambia County and Hillsborough County. And if you watch those videos, I just go to the appraiser's website. I go from left to right, and I go from top to bottom, and I open up every potential link that's there because I want to see what information is available in the county from the appraiser's website. So once I've done that, then I can go ahead and go through my properties pretty quickly. I can look at, does it have wetlands? Does it have flood zones? Does it have road access? And most of that information I can get from the appraiser's website.
All right, Michael, I'm gonna have to jump off, but I'm gonna let you finish, and then I'll check it back on the recording later.
Yeah, and if you want, just shoot me a message tomorrow. You and I can hop on, and give me a little heads up so I can get into the county website and try to have an understanding of what's available.
Right, understood. All right, Michael, I appreciate it.
All righty, I'll see you.
Thank you.
Anyway, it wasn't beneficial. I didn't know the county, trying to maneuver around, so I couldn't solve this problem immediately. But looking at it, I think he was in Keystone Heights right here, and there's not a lot of transactions there. So it would take a little bit longer to see if that one may, what we could potentially offer. But a suggestion would be, for him is go back to week 2. And these are just samples of how I go through the county websites. Sandra, this might help. But it just, here's a 20-minute video of how I go through the appraiser's website. And it is pretty much, I'll go back here. Here's the appraiser's website. And I want to click on every link, and all the appraiser's websites are different, but I click on here, and I can see I can put in an address. What does an advanced search do? What information is available? Finding out every link here. But if I put in a specific property, now once I do that, it's going to give me additional information about a property. But here's a link I can click on. What happens if I click on these links? And so it does take me about an hour to get familiar with the appraiser's website. What happens if I click on these links and I really dig deep into the appraiser's website to see what's available? What happens when I click on this link? And when I do, it's going to open up additional information. And so now I'm going to see what's available here. When I go to layers, here's everything that's available. It's going to tell me if there's wetlands or flood zones. I can pull up comparables. I can pull up boundaries, flood zones, additional maps here. So just as an example, get rid of this, click on sales, vacant sales, and see what happens when I do that. And it'll take a second to load, but you can see here's additional sales right here. So this one we sold for 15.9, and here was a comp, 15,000 and 17,000 right there. So we bought this for 10,000 because I already knew I could sell it probably between 15 and 17, and we sold it for 15.9. So that was an example. Patrick had Clay County. I'm not familiar with the website. It does take some time to get up to speed with the appraiser's website. So sometimes as we're doing this live, it's a little more difficult or painful because I don't want to spend an hour while everyone's watching trying to learn the appraiser's website, but that's an example of how I do it. And if you go back here to week 2, there's some samples of how I search the appraiser's website right there. Any thoughts on that? Erica, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Are you still doing a lot of texting?
I am. I had a closing earlier this month, and then I got another one scheduled next week. So yeah, it's working out.
Oh my goodness. Are you using, I forgot, REI Reply?
Yes.
Okay, because you typically use REI Reply, or Launch Control's another one that people use frequently.
Mhm.
Are you having any challenges or issues with it?
No, because I have a spam list, so that way I can avoid certain words
Right.
when texting. So that seems to help. I use that as my Bible.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're not supposed to use words like offer or maybe price or
Exactly.
words,
Or even the word interested.
yeah, words that are going to trigger spam.
Correct. Now, I have a quick question. When you're doing your comps, let's say you have a lot that's located on in a residential area versus something that's located on a main road. Is there when you're comping, a certain discount that you'll offer in addition to what you offer the seller?
Yeah, you mean you may have property that's on a busy road that sells for 20,000 and a property that's in a quiet area that sells for 25,000.
Uh-huh,
What I try to extract from the market is have ideally two properties that are virtually identical except one feature. So if you had 2 half acres, one was on a busy street, and it's residential, you're not going to want to have it there with your kids.
right.
And it sold for 20,000, and you have the one on the quiet street that sold for 25, and one of those might not even be yours. Let's say yours is on a quiet street, the one that sold for 25 is on a quiet street, and the one that sold for 20 is on a busy street. What you extracted from the market is that people penalize the one on the busy street $5,000 for the traffic, or they pay a $5,000 premium for the one that's on the quiet street. So as I'm doing those, I try to extract that from the market. And we did a session here, I think week 5. And appraising is a whole semester class in its own, but here's a section right here on appraising. And it talks about, in this section, are virtually identical. One sold for $15,000 and the other one sold for $17,000, and they're both right there. We ultimately sold our subject, and that's the one that I just went over. $15,900. So anyway, the best thing is if you want to figure out, how much is someone going to pay because one has sewer and one has septic. I try to find 2 properties that are virtually identical except for the one thing, and you can extract from the market the premium or penalty people will attribute to that, the difference.
Okay,
And appraising, that's my background, but it's not perfect. It's kind of a science art. And if I'm not sure, you can either talk to realtors or I just make a very conservative offer.
okay. Thank you so much.
And if you have a specific example, we can look at them. But the challenge is there always aren't perfect comparables. Sometimes they just don't exist. And another way you can do that is look at the assessed value. This property is assessed at $12,200. And typically within an area, I can find out the ratio between the assessed value and what I can sell it for. So we bought this property in 2022 for $10,000. In 2022, it was assessed at approximately $10,000. But we sold it for a premium of 50% over the assessed value. So now let's say I have another property in this area, but I don't have any good comps. Sometimes I can look at the assessed value and see what premiums people are paying in a certain market above assessed value. So if you had one on a busy street, maybe it was assessed at $10,000, and you have one on the quiet street and maybe it's assessed at $15,000. And then I can take the assessed value, and basically I'm just looking at a ratio. Here people paid, or we paid just about assessed value, but we sold it for 15 or I don't know, 60% more than assessed value. So sometimes if there aren't perfect comps, I can look at assessed value, and it's just another way of trying to determine current market value.
Okay. Now, do you ever come across any commercial lots that you flip? Because I have a difficult time trying to comp those. It's not located on a certain website like loop.net or
Yeah,
something.
a few properties that I come across will have a zoning here. It will say zoning commercial here, but it's still in like a residential area. So now I can buy it and sell it as residential. But if this was one where you could put on a strip mall or something like that, I don't deal with those type of properties. I just, I've got my niche and I just stick pretty much with residential.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can use LoopNet and there's some other tools available. It's just not my niche. I might do it maybe once or occasionally. So I don't want to get off, course here. I'd probably talk to realtors in the area that sell those type of properties and just say, They want 50,000 for it. You know, if I was to list it with you and we want to sell it in 90 days or 60 days or less, what do you think we should list it for? And get the professional that's deals with commercial that would know much better than I.
Mhm. Okay, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have you ever tried a software called the Land Portal?
Tried something called the Land Portal.
Yes, it's strictly it's similar to PropStream, but they only deal with vacant land mainly.
Um,
Is this
Software
the Apke,
by the
Apke
Apke
brothers?
brothers.
Yeah, I would.
I started using that.
What do you think of it?
I like it because it it shows you the properties that are located in wetlands, landlocked. So it narrows down my list a lot better, I think, than PropStream because of it. There's a lot of features that it does. So I
yeah,
was wondering if anybody else uses it.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. Um, you know, I'll use Land ID that will do some of that as well.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if they developed that product or if it's a product that might be available and they labeled it themselves. I don't know.
Okay.
But I'll explore it. You know, there's so many tools out there. Gordon, we were talking last week, I think, on skip tracing, and it's the new skip tracing tool of the week, the new flavor of the week.
Yeah.
So I try to keep up with most of them. I can't keep up with all of them, and I probably sampled, you know, a very high percentage of them. I just haven't tried that one.
Okay.
So a week from tonight, and he's been on before, but we're going to have Jesse on that has Pebble, and they're always updating. The one thing I like about Jesse, they're always updating their tools, and he's right here in the library. There's an interview with Jesse. He's going to update us. You know, I've tried so many CRMs, you know, the flavor of the week CRM, and I've probably tried them all, and I keep coming back to Pebble. It's a good way to continuously follow up, you know, and they all have features, you know, that some are better than the others, but Jesse will be on in a week. He'll probably show us the updates in a demo for 30 or 35 minutes and be available for Q&A. And historically, I haven't done as well as I should have with follow-up, and that's kind of the thing is, you know, you follow up with them in 3 months, and we were talking about it a little bit today. How often should you follow up? You know, probably 3 or 4 times a year. So when the people are finally ready and something changes in their life, and I've already made an offer 6 months ago, I just want to be there when they have maybe a wedding's coming up or a funeral or someone's going to college, someone lost their job, you know, whatever the issue is, you know, and Donna knows that from you know, selling homes is why are people selling? Well, sometimes something changed, you know, and same thing with land. So with Jesse, it's a great tool for the follow-up.
What about Freedom Soft? Are you still doing it?
I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, it's not
You know,
easy.
it's amazing what I could see, but I don't know how many hours I spent on it, you know, 80 hours or 100 hours. And it was just overwhelming. And, you know, if I had a master's in Freedom Soft, you know, I really liked it, but, and I'm figuring if things are so difficult to figure out and I'm sharing them, nobody's going to want to use them because it's just too hard to figure out.
Yeah.
You know, and so I couldn't figure it out. So I probably spent $1,500 or $2,000 on it, and it was including hiring someone to program it for me. You know, the cost that I put into it, and I'm just moving on.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm using Pebble. You know, it's so much easier, and I'm pretty easy to get hold of. Jesse is easy to get hold of, and I can go ahead and have an interaction with them. They have twice a week on Wednesdays and Fridays. One is, bring your questions, and the other one is they'll do a training session. So, his service is good. But my other suggestion is for people to keep their costs down. By the time you buy all these tools and what have you, it can add up. And, PropStream's $99 a month. Jesse's is, I think it's about $160 a month. And then you're doing mail, and you've got REI reply, you've got launch control. My suggestion is keep your costs down, as low as possible. And the tool, and I make recommendations, but the tool that I recommend is PropStream, because I use it so often. It's $99 a month. And Pebble, and I'm very straightforward. Jesse gives me Pebble. I share it. I don't push it, but I share it. So he gives me a complimentary use of Pebble, but he also has an annual subscription or month to month, like PropStream. It's month to month. And there's another tool, Data Tree, that does what PropStream does, very similar, but it's a year subscription. It's a couple $1,000s. So I want to make sure that we keep everyone's overhead down.
Mm.
So as I build out Pebble, and I sent Jesse a message today, I said, I need to lock myself away for 2 days and just really study Pebble. But as I build mine out, if anyone signs up for it and they want my framework as it's built out, you get that automatically. And it just shows, here's the steps that I do. Here's how I follow up. These are the letters I use. That's just included how he does it.
It has to be simple.
Yeah, but it's much easier. I need 2 days on it, and with Freedom Soft, I don't know if I was in there for 100 hours. I don't know exactly, but I couldn't figure it out. It was just too hard.
I'm surprised they don't offer training with Freedom Soft, or they do. I think you have to pay for training.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's an upsell, and Jesse's is well, here, let's see, couple. He's got his pricing right here, and if you need help, I need help. Let's see, resources, live training. So he does his training, I think, on maybe Wednesdays. Here's leads and deal workshop, which is, you just click the button and you sign up for it. It's Fridays, and the other one was office hours. You just come in, kind of like what we're doing, and he does those on Wednesdays. And you just, put in your information and click it, and, you get all your automated emails. But his website is good. They do updates monthly. It's Jesse and a partner, and he's got a couple support staff. So I recommend it, but my suggestion would be next Wednesday, at same time, 6 p.m., he'll probably share the platform for 35 minutes. He can explain it much better than I can. And then it's, Q&A after that. So the main thing is, build a good list. And sometimes we're talking today about building a list that's laser focused. It's a much smaller list on people that need to sell, and then put them in a tool like Pebble. So you're maybe you make an offer now. It'll automatically pop up for you to do your follow-up in 3 months, do another follow-up in 3 months, and it can text, it can do phone calls. You can send your mailing directly through it. You don't need to send out 500 pieces. You can mail one letter at a time.
Is Pebble good at keeping track of your KPIs?
Yeah,
Some
Pebble's
company that does that.
Pebble's good at KPIs also. You can put it in there, how much, your budget was, how, and Jesse will explain it much better.
Okay.
So I use Pebble. I wanted to try Freedom Soft. I'm back at Pebble, and I've just, I've used, REI Sift, so many of them, and I'm back at Pebble. I always keep my eyes open. Like I think you had mentioned Land Portal. I want to explore it, but I typically come back to Pebble, to PropStream, you know, kind of my foundation.
Erica, does Pebble give leads? Not Pebble, Land Portal give leads?
No, they don't give leads.
You don't have it in your software to get leads from them?
No. I do, they're good, like, you know, when you're driving for dollars virtually.
Oh,
So with texting, you can contact a lot of people. How many do you send, Erica?
I send about 1,000 a week.
Wow. And so you have multiple markets, obviously.
Yeah, I have a few counties that I do, yeah.
Yeah, we had good luck with text messaging. I paused it for the time being. I'm just cautious with regulations and what have you.
Yeah, because that can get you.
Yeah. So we went over today a little bit about expired MLSs, and I've got Melanie who's out of Las Vegas, and she's getting started and a little overwhelmed with how many, there's 14 niche lists that I do. And I said, Melanie, just keep it simple. Why don't you just pick one list? And what I suggested for her was just do the people that are going to lose their property at tax deed sales. And so these people's choices are to pay the back taxes, lose the property, sell it to someone like us. And that was my suggestion to her. Don't try to get 2,000 leads, and everyone has a different situation. I suggested to her to get 200 leads of people that need to sell and people that are going to lose their property at tax deed sales. And if she has 200 and she's following up every 3 months, out of the 200, say 5% of the people wanted to sell. That would be 10 deals a year. So instead of getting so overwhelmed and I've got 2,500 leads or thousands and thousands, for her, keep her overhead down, narrow it down to one list, just do the tax deed sale list, build a list of about 200 people, and just constantly follow up with them. Find one that needs to sell, do your homework, do your due diligence, make them an offer. And if they say no, follow up in 3 months. Like these people here, they just had to write a check for $5,000. And that one's not necessarily vacant land. But if you go down here, this person here, this is vacant land. They just wrote a check for $4,000. If it was going to tax deed sale, they were at least 2 years behind. They'd probably have issues. And this property is on the 800 block of 10 Mile Road. We just sold a property at 609 10 Mile Road, and we sold it for $51,900. But this guy here, this is a bigger property. This guy here either has to pay or just did pay the $4,000. But when I look at his history, it may pull up his delinquent taxes or not. Sometimes if it's going to tax deed sale, it won't show me the information here. But I can see his history right here. He was going to lose the property at tax deed sale in 2021. He was going to lose it at 2022. He's going to lose it at 2023. And he did redeem it, but this guy's probably going to be back in the same situation. And this guy just wrote a check for, I don't know, it was
4,000.
$4,000.
Yeah.
As you weed through them one at a time, I'll find some people, they wrote a check for $2,000 and they just don't have $2,000. So even though they already paid that money, that would be one that I might follow up with because they probably sure could use a check for $6,000 or $10,000. And if they say no, I just put it into Pebble and follow up in 3 months and 6 months. I'll follow up when they get their tax bill. And if you have 200 of those, it's not tons of them, 200 of them. And if you're following up every 3 months, it's 2 a day. It's following up with 2 people a day. And so if you have 200 of them and maybe 5% turn into deals, that would be 10 deals. And if half that turned up, you know, it was 2.5%. Well, that's 5 deals, and it's working a lot smaller list, but doing a great job at following up that people definitely have these pain points. So if I go to February, you know, I can go through here and find out the people that redeemed. And if they didn't redeem, I want to go ahead and buy it from them. And if they did redeem it, here's one here. This is a vacant lot. They just wrote a check for $2,500. The property is valued at $46,000. And I think we clicked on this one today. There's 5 owners, but I'd probably pass on it because I don't want to deal with 5 owners. But just as I'm looking at to see if this is one of my 200, you can see here, CJ, someone is deceased. CJ, someone's deceased. CJ, someone's deceased. OT is a death certificate. And these 5 heirs, nobody wants to pay the tax bill. That's why it's going to tax deed sale. I would probably pass on it though, because I don't want to deal with 5 people. But an idea for someone like Melanie that doesn't want to spend a lot on marketing. She has a full-time job. My suggestion to her was pull 200 people, focus on one niche, don't focus on 14, and just consistently follow up with them.
Yeah, you're right about that. I like focusing on the tax delinquency list.
Yeah.
Question, how far in advance, if it's going to a tax deed auction, do you reach out to them?
Repeat that, please.
When a property is going up for auction, how far in advance do you reach out to them?
Yeah, well, as far as the information's available. So I think with Donna, we looked at some counties and the information only goes out 2 months. But here, I have people, this list is already out to July. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so what I was doing with Louise, and in July, you can see all these numbers here are very low. So many of these are a lot of these are vacant land. So we're mailing to them every month between now and July. And as it gets closer, this is July, but as I look at, we'll look at July again, you can see a smaller percentage has redeemed these. But as it gets closer to the sale, we'll do one in February. Typically a lot higher percentage has redeemed them because they only have 30 more days or they're going to lose their property. But if I'm talking to these people in July and now it's June and I've already talked to them twice and maybe I've sent them a letter, and I can do all that in Pebble. In Pebble, I can send them a letter. It looks just like a check. So here's a guy that's going to lose his property in July, and I can look at the property real quick, and he owes $2,000. It's assessed at $11,000, so it's probably worth, just say probably worth 20. And Eric, this one's zone commercial. We spoke about that. But this one, even though it's commercial, I would Google Earth and see, are these residential properties right here? And if they were residential, even though it's zone commercial, I would follow up with this guy. So as far as how far out do I go, as far out as the information is available. So, you know, right here, and if I wanted to do a deal quick, I'd go to maybe March and look at these, and I would just kind of do the sniper approach. And if they've redeemed it and it's vacant land, even though they've redeemed it, I'd follow up with them, you know, because the reason it's going to tax deed sales is because they're at least 2 years behind. So they might have just been lazy or they had a situation. So here's one here on right. This is a vacant land. They just wrote a check for $2,800. I can look at this and see this is assessed at $27,000, and I'm not sure what this David May Sons Gulf of Mexico. I don't know what that is. Maybe just because Pensacola is on the Gulf of Mexico. But this would be the perfect example of one to follow up with right there. So
Now, do you go with their title company? Because normally I tell them that we already have a title company, and sometimes the seller wants to select their own title company.
Well, I would tell them if they want to select their own title company, then they pay for it.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, typically in our offers, we put the seller's responsible for liens and taxes, and we'll pay title and escrow. So if they
Okay.
want to use their own title company, say, I'm fine with that. You know, if
Okay.
you want to pay your title company, you pay title and escrow fees.
I like that idea. Thank you. I'm gonna say that.
Yeah. You know, so I'm just prospecting, and this is a little more of the laser approach or sniper approach. And as we spoke earlier today, Gordon was there. You know, I'm just sitting on the TV and I've got my laptop there and watching the national championship football game on Monday night that's coming up. And I could just be sitting there and saying, oh my God, look at this one. This one definitely makes sense. And, you know, here's another one on Wright Street. I think that's one we just looked at. And so quickly, I'm looking for ones with low dollar amount because those are more likely vacant land. Or in the right-hand column, this one that's highlighted, it says 1,000 block of West Romano. When it says block, they typically haven't had an address assigned, but this guy just paid $2,800 in taxes. He was going to lose it. It's assessed at 56,000. And sometimes I'll see it and I'll see that I'll look at the mailing address. And we did one today, and I think the mailing address may have been in Virginia. So I'm thinking, well, they're $2,000 or $3,000 behind. They live out of state. They're not paying the taxes, and that's one that I put on that list of say 200 properties, and I would just follow up with them, and that would be likely to turn into a deal. But I'm not looking for, you know, 50% of them to turn into deals because we don't need those huge numbers. But if 5% of 200 turned into deals or 1% of 200 turned into deals, well, that's still 2 deals.
Right. Now, are you putting the price that you want to offer on there?
Well, it depends how I'm contacting them. You know, if it's just going to be a cold call, you know, I'll just have a discussion with them and see how the conversation goes. If I'm going to go out to July, we're just sending letters once a month. So this guy in July is going to get February, March, April, May, June, you know, and either he's going to not be thrilled or we're going to be the ones that has kept that trying to build rapport with them.
Right, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of like this, you know, especially it depends on, we've got one guy in Texas, he does 600 deals a year. You know, he's not going to want to do this, you know, laser approach. It just doesn't make sense. He's doing, you know, 48,000 pieces of mail a month or whatever it is. You know, Melanie, some of us are happy doing, you know, 5 deals a year, 2 deals a year, 10 deals a year. This is a good approach for that. And it's
Okay.
not overwhelming time-wise, you know, what's going to take the time is to build the list of the 200.
Mhm.
But if I
Right.
went from now to July, there might be 40 in there. But I can also go back in time and go to, you know, October of last year, look at these people that lost their properties. And I'm just looking for something that says block BLK over here on the right, kind of quickly. Here, let's see. Here's one block right here. And so they just paid, you know, $5,700, you know, 5 months ago. And I'm just doing my homework. Well, this one's valued at $200,000. That may be out of many people's price ranges. And it looks like the property may have sold here, but you know,
Vacant commercial,
yeah,
commercial.
you know, so just going back and just prospecting. This is just sitting on the couch prospecting kind of stuff.
Mhm.
You know, here's another one, 400 block here. They paid $5,700. That might have been the one I just clicked on. Yeah. In some months, it's mostly residential. In some months, there's more land. I'm not quite sure how the county does that. But as I go to July, back to July, and you can see the numbers for July. You're going to see the delinquent amounts they're a lot lower. There's a lot that are $1,000 or $2,000, and typically I'm not sure if the county bundles the vacant land. You can see this one's block of Barker Street. They owe $2,000, and it's going to keep going up every month until the sale. But perfect example, Beverly Riley, it's assessed at $25,000. Looks like the property was gifted to her 9 years ago. You know, I can look at, you know, start doing my due diligence, seeing if it makes sense. But that type of one, and as she gets closer to the sale, I just want to be the one that's going to be there. And you use something like Pebble, you can text her, you can call her, and you can mail her.
Wow.
So it's a little bit more of the sniper approach. And as I'm prospecting, that's just what I'm doing. This is just one list. I have fun doing it. You know, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV and just prospecting. I go, oh, here's a good one. So that's now I got 201.
So you watch the national championship. Root for the Buckeyes. I'm from Ohio.
My father-in-law is a Notre Dame fan, so I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I actually root for Alabama.
Okay.
But anyway. So I love prospecting. That's a way to do it without having a huge list, spending a bunch of time on marketing. It's kind of my time spent while I'm watching the football game, or before we hopped on this morning, Gordon, I just got on PropStream and I was searching expired MLS leads, and you know, in 45 minutes I pulled up 3 of them that make sense to go on that laser focused list.
Michael, I have a question. To keep a list, would you just print the tax record right here? Would you just print it so you have something? I mean, you know who the owner is, you
Yeah,
know
I
the
would-
property.
I would just take it all and put it right in Pebble. And you can
If
put,
you had Pebble, right?
yeah, I would do that. And Jesse, there's a free trial. I'm not sure. I don't know if it's a 7-day. I'm not quite sure what it is. I don't remember. Here, start trial. And there's the prices right there. But start free trial, $147 a month. You know, and if you start it, I don't know how long I don't know how long that's good for. But anyway, he'll be here next Wednesday night, same time. And that would be a good one to attend. I mean, I think it'd be worthwhile. And you know, and if it's 200, you might not need something like Pebble. I mean, you can use a pad and paper, you know, just try to keep it simple. It's like Alexa, set a reminder. And I say, set a reminder. I got a Zoom at 4:50 for my 5 o'clock Zoom. She reminds me. Pebble is kind of a reminder.
Yep.
So, but anyway, I hope that gave you some insight. Sandra, if you need anything, shoot me a message. Don and Gordon, you guys know I'm here. Erica, I appreciate you as well.
Thank you so much for your help.
All right.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thank you very
Michael.
much. I see
Appreciate
you
it.
guys.
Not
Yep,
every.
good night.